The non-Jewish community does not understand our fixation, our obsession with Israel.
Good evening, and welcome to the 2018 to the 2016-2019 Taglit Birthright Israel Winter Mega Event, Summer Mega Event, right here in Jerusalem, the eternal capital of our people.
Is there anyone here from the United States of America?
What's your name? Where are you from, brother?
I'm Michael, and I'm from Detroit, Michigan.
Everybody knows somebody who was in the army. Israeli soldiers, they're hot, they're awesome, they're strong, they're everything we could all want to be.
My name is Israel Han. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I came around Birthright in 2016. I joined the Army 4 months after I finished Birthright. This is my flight back to America, and I'm still in the Army now. Yeah! I'm Israel!
Kol hakavod. It's beautiful.
The first time I've been to the United States, I met so many nice people. Jewish Americans will tell me things like, we like you, but we don't like Palestinians. Even though I'm the only Palestinian they know. Of course, around that time I would take it personally. But then you come to realize that people do not know. They know nothing about Palestine and Palestinians, or have no idea about what Palestinians are going through.
Coming into Palestine for the first time, I remember asking people, what do you think? Should I do it? And the response that I always got was, you know, you're gonna be killed. As a curious young person, like, what is this thing that is so horrifying that you can't bear to let me see it? Like, is it that bad? Found in the depths of my family's house. I found some of my Hebrew textbooks from elementary school. Israel shel simcha, my Israel. Congratulations to Simone Zimmerman for winning the Israel Jubilee contest. February 1998. I was 7. I had like a pretty traditional Jewish upbringing. I grew up in LA. I went to a Jewish day school, kindergarten through the end of high school. I went to Jewish youth group, Jewish camp. I have family in Israel. I lived in Israel in high school on an exchange program. Israel was just treated like a core part of being a Jew. So you did prayers and you did Israel.
Israel is something that I feel so passionately about. Like it's, you know, it's my greatest passion. Everything Israel. I became a Jewish educator after my daughters started Hebrew school. I started teaching 2nd grade During the years, I did 4th grade also. And just to be able to start them on this wonderful journey. I mean, it gets in your blood. And we teach Israel at the day school very well. We introduce them to the food and to the music and to the culture, in addition to the history and the geography.
Figure out which one is the Israeli flag. Draw a circle around every time you see the symbol of the state of Israel. Draw your own symbol of the state of Israel. We also celebrated holidays, obviously. So Hanukkah, Israeli independence, all of it together.
Can you separate Israel in Judaism? I don't know. I can't. You know, some people I think can. To me, it's the same. You know, you can't separate it. Israel is Judaism, and Judaism is Israel. And that is who I am, and that is my identity. And I think every single thing that I experienced along my life has melded into that. Like there was never, you know, a divide for me.
I grew up in a conservative Jewish household in Atlanta, Georgia. Israel was a central part of everything we did in school. My elementary and middle school, as well as my high school, both had organized trips to Israel, which was touted as one of the most important things you could do.
Do you want to go to Israel too? Yeah! We want to go! 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 We want to go!
When I visited Israel for the first time when I was 8 years old, I put a note in the kotel, in the Western Wall, saying that one day I hope to live in Israel and prosper.
Every one of our kids should be going over, not for 10 days, but for a minimum of a semester or a year. Every time I send somebody over to Israel, they come back, all of a sudden, they feel totally different about who and what they are as Jews.
When I was a teenager and I went to Israel, it was amazing to me to travel in this place where Hebrew was a language that I finally got to speak on the street with people, and where Jewish heroes, the streets were named after them.
We're planting seeds that eventually are going to blossom. Does the average congregant understand that I'm teaching them to become Zionists? Probably not, but it is part of my madness, so to speak.
I learned about Israel as this great miracle of Jewish history. For thousands of years, we were persecuted, and Israel is the place that you can go to be safe. My grandfather's family made it to Israel. His immediate family were some of the only ones who escaped the Holocaust. Many American Jews, if not most people I know, have family or friends that live in Israel.
Israel is the insurance policy. It's still, today a Jew doesn't have to worry. Where is he going to go, God forbid? Even here. No Holocaust survivor will say to you it could never happen again. I was born in Poland, 1940. Not a good place for a Jewish kid to be born. My parents were separated. My father went through a series of camps. Who knows why I survived and 1.5 million Jewish children perished. And so Israel became very, very significant in my life, even though 6,000 miles away. I probably visited Israel over 100 times in my lifetime. You know, as we sit now, my granddaughter is there for 2 weeks in high school.
I did have many friends in Israel growing up, and every time I would visit Israel, I felt closer and closer. The Jewish summer camps would always bring a big contingency of Israelis to try to drive Israeli culture within the camp and connect the American Jews to Israeli culture.
So when I was in high school, I went on this Jewish youth trip to Israel, and one of the programs we did was called kada, where we spent a day pretending to be soldiers in the Israeli army. We wore army uniforms, and stuff like that was just sort of a normal part of what our childhood looked like.
At summer camp, in the middle of the night, they would wake us up and take us out. Sometimes that was to pull pranks, and other times I remember doing military games, using the command pozatsta, sneaking around. So anytime the commander, who was one of our counselors, said pozatsta, we would all get on the ground, and they made a game out of it. Simulating being in the military and sneaking around and having to be a part of that.
On youth programs that I participated in Israel, you could spend a whole week on an Israeli army base wearing army uniforms and going through a sort of simulation of basic training. And that's where some people, learn to shoot guns for the first time.
It's not just regular military games, it's specifically using Israeli military commands, often with Israeli counselors giving them. When you're a young kid, that really drills it into you that this is something important. And I wanted to be a part of that.
We often talked about the ways that you could be a good supporter of the Jewish people. One was to join the army, and the other was to go become an Israel advocate.
There were even clubs within school to work on advocating for Israel. My high school sent a delegation to the AIPAC conference.
AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. They're the people who tell the Congress which legislation affecting Israel they like and which they don't.
The bond between the United States and Israel is unbreakable today, unbreakable tomorrow, unbreakable forever.
AIPAC is just the thing that you do. Like going to the AIPAC conference is just sort of seen as like a community event.
Here with us today are leaders from across the pro-Israel community, including Abe Foxman.
I learned a long time ago, there is no way you can say no to Abe.
I don't know to what extent anybody makes a difference. I try to make a difference. Jewish education is still a major priority for the future, and certainly relationship to Israel. If you were to ask me, if you had $100 million, how would you change the future of American Jews? I would make trips to Israel available to any Jewish kid who wanted to go. Make that experience. They're doing it now. It's called birthright.
It is up to you to be our soldiers abroad, armed with love and knowledge and conviction, ready to sway public opinion in Israel's favor.
Learning about the quote-unquote conflict is something that is part of programming as something that you have to learn how to defend Israel from the lies that other people are saying, and you have to be able to tell people the truth. By the time I got to college, I had teachers who said to me, people hate Israel, people are attacking Israel, people don't know the truth about Israel, and we're the only people who actually know the truth about Israel. If you're a Jewish college student, Hillel is your central address for Jewish life on campus. As a freshman, I remember walking into Hillel. It was one of the first places I went when I got to campus. It's a place where you can go for meals, to meet other young Jewish people. Pro-Israel advocacy is a central part of how they work to engage Jewish young people.
I'm the Director of Engagement and Programs here at Hillel. And this campus happens to be very proactive for Israel. A lot of people are very passionate. A lot of people love Israel. And there's a lot of advocacy here on campus in lots of different ways, lots of different groups. How did you become involved in advocacy for Israel?
I kind of came to Hillel just because I was new on campus. I didn't really know where to go, and I really did find a lot of friends here.
I came here on and off, but then when I went on the birthright trip and kind of got to know the staff, Tom and Jackie, a lot better, got to know people at Hillel a lot better, and just got to know Israel a lot better, I came back and I knew that I wanted to put a lot more of myself into Hillel, the Jewish community on campus, and just Israel advocacy in general. On birthright, we had Israeli soldiers with us throughout the entire trip. You learn so much, and you learn the reason that they serve.
It's just a feeling that I don't think any of us could ever imagine except for Tom.
My job is doing Israeli program on campus, and that relates to Jewish events, cultural, political. Israeli events, cultural, political. I would say, name a university in America, we probably have a person there. I like to talk about the Army a lot because that's an experience that I lived through, and I have a lot of personal stories. There are a couple of students who said, yeah, I'm thinking about joining the IDF one day. So my first thing is saying to them, are you sure? Because it's not an easy decision. That being said, it will probably end up being the most meaningful experience that you ever go through. You're gonna tell your kids stories about it. Yeah.
One of our former young emissaries just graduated into the Air Force. I mean, that's the greatest gift you can give, you know, and we actually have had quite a few of our former students join the IDF. Amazing. I mean, just amazing. These are kids. These are 18, 19-year-olds.
It's like something I've dreamed about doing since I was 7 years old.
You have you find your sense of purpose.
All my friends are so proud of me, and they understand that this is something that I have to do.
Almost 10% of my graduating class at my Jewish high school joined the Israeli army. And I had many friends from my summer camp and youth group who joined the army as well.
Part of becoming part of Israeli society is to join the military. When I was in high school, I told my parents I don't even need to apply to college because I'm gonna just join the Israeli military and make aliyah and live in Israel. I honestly have felt for many years that I fit in better in Israeli society than I do in American society, even before I moved there. And I wanted to defend what I saw as my country. So when I enlisted, I was a magist, which is a heavy machine gunist, during my basic and advanced training, and then they put me on a light machine gun. We were training for war, training for strategy to conquer hilltops and conquer open spaces. 1 week was focused on urban warfare in close quarters, and that was simulated in what looked like Arab housing. After the 7 months of our training, we were deployed to the West Bank. Our missions included working in 2 different checkpoints, patrolling villages on foot in full gear and bulletproof vests. We would go into apartment buildings, go up to the roof, and make sure that we could be seen so that we could make our presence felt. We wanted them to know that we were watching. That was the goal of the mission. We would set up what's called a checkpost, which is a checkpoint that is situated at a major intersection. At checkpoints, we would stop people, create a traffic jam, check their IDs, check their trunks, every day on their way to work or on their way to visit their family, to keep them on their toes, essentially. And they being Palestinians. Even though Israel was a central part of everything we did in school, we never really discussed the Palestinians. It was presented to us that Israel was basically an empty wasteland when the Jews arrived. There were some Arabs there, they said, but there was no organized people. They had really treated the land poorly. Yeah, there are Palestinians, and they just want to kill us all and want us to leave the land.
I just don't think I had any conception of anything about what it means to be a Palestinian besides that it means that you're a person who kills Jews or wants to kill Jews.
It was always presented to us that the Arabs only know terrorism.
Ever since I came back from the States, I realized that the best way to help people understand the reality imposed on us by the State of Israel is for them to be there. The one thing that I want to give the rest of my life for is to help people understand the reality that is going on in Palestine.
I grew up all of my life in this occupation. I grew up in Bethlehem, in Palestine. To be honest, I do have my days where I wake up and look in the mirror and ask what is going on and what can I even do today to change anything in the situation. I remember from the youngest age growing up with my parents always warning me, always telling me not to go out, not to go on the street, not to play on the street because of the soldiers and the settlers.
Of course, like your first experience with a soldier is terrorizing, you know, especially because they would invade your house or your family's house late at night. Like they love to work after midnight.
My first experience with soldiers as a child was an experience that put fear in me. I remember from the youngest age growing up with my parents always warning me, always telling me not to go out, not to go on the street, not to play on the street because of the soldiers and the settlers.
Of course, like your first experience with a soldier is terrorizing, you know, especially because they would invade your house or your family's house late at night. Like they love to work after midnight.
My first experience with soldiers as a child was an experience that put fear in me. An American Jewish soldier talking to my father and yelling at him and shouting at him, which of course as a child you feel very ashamed and insulted. And then my father, because ironically we are American citizens as well, turned to him in an American accent and asked him where he was from. And then the soldier was almost like shocked by this question. Because for his mind, you know, he wants to say Israel and Jewish people, but he's talking to an American now. And he told him like from Chicago. And then just this reality that like even as a child I remember this American soldier who just moved here to be part of an army to play cowboys and Indians. Somebody who comes here from New York or from Chicago and claiming that this land is theirs.
What makes like an 18-year-old American kid who was given a 10-day trip for free in Palestine, what made him want to come in and sacrifice his life? Why would a foreigner think it's okay to have superior rights to the rights of the indigenous population? because somebody told them it's home.
This is our land. This is ours. That's what was conveyed to us.
It got to hit me that people look at Palestine and Palestinians from the point of view of the oppressor, not from the point of view of the oppressed.
I think what I knew about who was in Israel before the state was created is basically there were some Jews always there. Most Jews were in exile. We'd always yearned to go back. The idea that there were native inhabitants that lived there was not even part of my frame of reference.
اطلب هي حمص مسبح This restaurant makes the most delicious hummus and falafel in town. The family is not from the town of Bethlehem, just like my mother's family. They were expelled from the city of Jaffa back in 1948. I was born to a family of victims of the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. The ethnic cleansing that was carried out by the founders of the State of Israel. My mother's family were expelled from the largest Palestinian city pre-1948, which was the city of Jaffa. My father was a newborn at that time. He was carried by his family. They ended up in Bethlehem waiting for the atrocities to come to an end so they would be able to go back home. Of course, none of those people were ever allowed back home.
My father's family was in Jerusalem up until 1948. When the war happened, he was shot by a sniper and was killed on the spot. His children actually dragged his body down and buried it in the courtyard of the house. A few days later, when the Jewish forces took over that neighborhood, they demanded that all the non-Jews of that neighborhood be evicted. It was the biggest mass exodus, percentage-wise, of a people from their land in modern history.
The ethnic cleansing of Palestine, the term Nakba, the catastrophe, is the tragedy or catastrophe that hit almost every single Palestinian family, nearly 750,000 victims. It's traumatizing in almost every possible level. Nearly 78% of the land of Palestine became under the control of the State of Israel.
What else was I told about Israel? We were told it was a land without a people, for a people without a land, and we came back. From the ashes of the Holocaust, the State of Israel was birthed.
The rights of the people that lived here does not exist in that narrative, and other than us being an obstacle, the Nakba continues. It started in 1948 and continues until this day.
In 1967, the State of Israel managed to complete its control over Palestine by taking over the territory of the West Bank and the territory of Gaza.
Okay, here's the good stuff. More maps of Greater Israel. That's just sort of, the whole land. We're always taught that the whole land was ours. I mean, that's sort of what they teach you.
After the 1967 war, Israel put a very forceful, very violent military force to dominate and control the lives of the Palestinians that continues until this day.
The intention of Israeli control over the land of Palestine is complete colonization of the territory. Building homes for those who are born to Jewish families, and also demolishing the homes of those who were born for Palestinian families.
Palestinians kicked out from their homes, confiscated by settlers.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
No, no one's allowed to steal it, ya ammi.
A massive movement to confiscate land, to build settlements, to expand settlements.
Before we were even fully trained, we were deployed to protect settlements. It was all for the security of the settlements.
Israel filled the occupied West Bank with Jewish Israelis living in different colonies and settlements throughout the region. And those individuals are subject to Israeli civil law. While you have Palestinians living within the exact same territory that are subject to an Israeli military law. When an American citizen comes here, he has more rights than I would have my entire life.
We are in the quote-unquote West Bank. We're in the quote-unquote settlements. This is one of the roadblocks that kind of ensure that the cars get checked to see that no terrorists are coming in. I lived in America, and then I came back to Israel by myself at the age of 17 to serve in the army. And there are elements, what I would call the jihadist elements, that don't accept our presence here. But it's just tough for them. It's a great vision coming to fruition in our time, and there's nothing going to stop us.
From the day you are born, you live in, day out, without experiencing a day of freedom. Palestinians have to be forced to live in cages.
So I'm Israeli, born and raised. As a young Israeli growing up, my grandparents lived in the center of Jerusalem.
The battle for Jerusalem. At least 26 people are reported dead.
People I knew were injured and killed. And from a very young age, I knew I'm going to be joining the military. I was never in a Palestinian house till I barged into one in the middle of the night. One of the things that I did routinely was a mission where you are ordered to take over a Palestinian family's home and use that house as a military point. No warrant, you don't call in advance, it's a military occupation. And during my service, there were many moments where I saw myself acting violently, and there were moments of shame. We can detain any Palestinian just because he looked at us in the wrong way. That's a system that's based on violence.
Oh. What are you doing?
Check it.
I
have a security matter, you know? Security, it's about security. Is this security? I don't know, we'll see. This is a threat for you? Don't know yet. Okay, outside? Lock the booth.
When I was stationed in the West Bank, one day, one of my commanders came and grabbed me and one other soldier and said, there is a detainee at the Hawara checkpoint, and we need to go pick him up and bring him to the detention center that's in the base. When we got there, the Palestinian detainee, who was maximum in his early 20s, was sitting on the curb with his hands tied behind his back with zip ties and blindfolded. We got to the detention center within the base, and right outside, there were about 8 soldiers waiting for us. They saw us come, they grabbed the detainee from our hands and threw him to the ground while he's still blindfolded and hands tied behind his back. And they started kicking him for a good few minutes. I was responsible for this man's well-being. I was responsible to bring him from the checkpoint to the detention center. That was my job. And right outside the fence of the detention center, they grab him from me and they start beating him. I felt responsible, but my commander wasn't saying anything, so how could I say anything? The entire time that this was happening, a military police officer was standing just inside the fence watching and smoking a cigarette. As soon as these guys were done kicking this Palestinian man, the military police officer tossed his cigarette. He came, brought him inside the detention center. And I didn't even speak up. I didn't speak up. And that's just one of many stories that I have from my time in the West Bank. It took many years for me to really come to terms with my part in it. Only after I got out of the army did I begin to realize that the stuff that I did in the day-to-day, just working in checkpoints, patrolling villages, that in and of itself was immoral.
Palestinians in the West Bank, even though their lives are controlled by the state of Israel from morning, noon, and night, are not even theoretically citizens of the country in which they live. You see in some ways what non-democracy looks like up close.
When people look at the West Bank today and say, this is an apartheid system, it's not just throwing out a word. A Palestinian lives under a different legal system than an Israeli settler living next door.
Anyone who, sees these facts on the grounds or speaks to Palestinians would understand that this is a process of settler colonization, of an apartheid regime.
I remember crossing that checkpoint into Bethlehem, and before this, I had been very much opposed to ever using the word apartheid. But seeing the sort of night and day difference just by crossing this wall changed that for me in an instant.
Serving in the Israeli army is obviously one way of supporting Israel, but there's also another modern battle that is happening on campuses each and every single day, and you are standing in the front of it. And the Israeli government, the Israeli people, thank you for that, and that's why they put me here probably. And I thank you for that. So we need PR up here. There's a lot of PR to be made.
This university, thank God, is fairly apolitical. But I've heard all over the place how universities are these hotbeds of anti-Semitic and anti-Israel work.
I remember very vividly, I was sitting in my dorm room with a friend of mine. We got a phone call that an anti-Israel bill was being introduced in the student government. We bolted. On the way, called our parents. Both got sent talking points. And then we went into this student government meeting.
The Student Senate at the University of California, Berkeley, calling on campus officials to divest from companies that supply weapons that Israel uses in its occupation of the Palestinian territories.
You are siding with the Palestinians on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There's just no question about it.
I just knew it was this bad thing that I had to fight.
It is anti-Semitism. It is.
You are trying to make me feel marginalized on my own campus.
And I remember all of us going, well, you shouldn't boycott Israel because it's applying a double standard, and you shouldn't boycott Israel because it's unfair to single out Israel.
Please, I beg of you, I beg you, please, to have compassion and to remember that we are alienating students, and I am devastated by this bill. I am a human being.
I still remember you have these Palestinian students who get up and said, you know, Jewish students, you are crying about feeling silenced and marginalized. You know, my aunts and cousins didn't sleep for weeks while bombs were falling overhead in Gaza. What do you have to say to that?
If divestment is hostile, then where do we begin to describe the hostility of a military occupation?
I was thrown into all these conversations where people were throwing around all these words that I'd never heard before. Occupation, settlement, apartheid, ethnic cleansing. I just never heard anyone use any of these terms before. I thought I knew so much about Israel, but I didn't really know what anybody was talking about when they were talking about all these things. I remember coming to Hillel and saying, why aren't we answering Palestinian students' questions? I felt really embarrassed by it because mostly I felt like we weren't doing a good job refuting their arguments. Do we not have an actual counter-argument besides like rockets, double standard, anti-Semitism? I couldn't get an answer from anybody, and that was really disturbing for me. I mean, there are these people called Palestinians who think that Israel wields all this power over their lives and don't have rights, don't have water. What, like literally, what is this? How is this happening? How do I respond to it?
People that have a problem with Israel, there's a good chance they're misguided in some way or another.
Everyone have the freedom in Israel. Like, you can have any religion. You could do whatever you want in Israel, but only in Israel in the Middle East.
A lot of it's a lot of misinformation.
Some of it comes from misinformation. Some of it comes from ignorance. Some of it comes from lies. And it's very hard to deal with that in any kind of a positive way when they're coming from such a place of not understanding what the reality of the situation, when they just have this in their head, all this misinformation and all these lies. I mean, somehow pro-Palestinian has become pro-social justice.
I wanted to know answers from within my own community, and nobody could answer those questions for me. How is it that I am like the best the Jewish community has to offer? I've been through all the trainings, all the programs, and I don't know what the occupation is. I don't know what the settlements are. Eventually, it got to a point where I found myself wanting answers to the questions that Palestinian students were asking. And so it led me on a process of trying to go figure those things out for myself. What is this thing that is so horrifying that you can't bear to let me see it? The summer after my freshman year, I went to Palestine and I knowingly crossed the line for the first time. I don't think I realized the extent to which what I would come to see on the ground would really shock me and horrify me. What we've been told is that the only way that Jews can be safe is if Palestinians are not safe. And I guess the more I learned about that, the more I came to see that as a lie.
For American Jews coming here and listening to us and hearing us and seeing our humanity and understanding that we are not just out sitting in bunkers planning the next attack against Israelis, and that we do have a desire to live in peace and to have our freedom and to walk in our streets and to eat in our restaurants. And I mean, it's crazy that I have to say this, that we are real human beings that just want to survive and live in like all other people in this world.
We decided to bring the crisis of American Jewish support for Israel to the doorsteps of Jewish institutions to force that conversation in public.